and that moreover there is a greater concern about the reliability of the United States as a supplier as a result of these restrictions. This goes back to the Made in China 2025 announcement, which created concerns first in the executive branch, Department of Defense, and then also in Congress, that the Chinese government and industry were able to access U.S. high technology in order to accelerate their Made in China 2025 plan. And so that led to the executive branch agencies seeking congressional action to impose stronger controls in this area. Ultimately, Congress did act and enacted legislation last summer, and now the executive branch is implementing that legislation through rulemaking by the Commerce Department. Well, I think some of the concerns that we are hearing from companies relate to the potential for unilateral U.S. action in this area. We live in a globalized world, especially in the high technology sector, and there is significant concern that if the U.S. imposes additional controls in this area without coordination and support from other countries that have the ability to supply these high technology items, that could cause harm to U.S. industry without achieving the national security objectives. The government has made no official statements about which of those 14 areas would be priorities for early action. However, in discussions with administration officials, they have indicated that the two highest priority areas would be artificial intelligence and quantum computing. In those areas, they have indicated that there would likely be a handful of specific controls imposed rather than a broad control across the entire area of artificial intelligence. But they have not been specific about which areas within artificial intelligence they see as appropriate for specific export controls. I think there are two principal impacts on global supply chains. We are already hearing from our clients concern that if these controls are imposed in a unilateral manner, that non-U.S. customers of theirs will seek to source the restricted goods and technology from non-U.S. suppliers. And so they will expect to see a shift in their market away from their sales to sales by competitors abroad. And indeed, some are already saying that that is happening, and that moreover there is a greater concern about the reliability of the United States as a supplier as a result of these restrictions. Even if in the end controls are not imposed, the potential for them to be imposed leads customers in China and potentially in other countries to try to diversify the supply base so they are not so dependent on U.S. sourcing. And then the second potential impact relates to R&D activities and the role of non-U.S. engineers in supporting R&D at U.S. companies. And if U.S. Companies are not able to work with nationals from certain countries, such as China, in certain areas, then of course that will potentially impact their R&D, and it might even mean that other engineers are less interested in working at those companies because they will not have the top engineering talent. Well, there is potential for new export controls to cause economic damage without achieving the national security objective. If other countries who don't support the controls decide to backfill the customer needs and simply come in and supply the same or similar technology to the Chinese or other markets that are restricted under the control. That causes economic damage without achieving any national security objective. Currently, we expect 3 actions by the government. One relates to the Emerging Technologies Rule, for which the advance notice of proposed rulemaking was published last October. And we expect in that area that there will be a proposed rule with specific export controls published this summer. Second, we expect that there will be a new advance notice of proposed rulemaking, but this one in the area of so-called foundational technologies. And that will be published, we expect, in the late spring or possibly summer as well. That may be followed by a proposed rule in that area of foundational technologies before the end of 2019 or possibly into 2020. And then the third area would be there's specific review of China-related export controls, and there the government is looking at whether there are any items that are currently listed as sensitive on the Commerce Control List but don't require a license to go to China or other arms embargoed countries, whether those items should now require a license to go to China or other arms embargoed countries. And that we expect the government will conclude its review this year and take whatever action it decides is appropriate.